That's great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. We will begin. All right. Yeah, I already called it to order.
Those are the preliminaries.
That's okay. Yeah, there was a fun preliminary, just call to order.
You have an extra one?
Yeah. Okay, good afternoon. My name's Barry Saygraves. I'm with Juniper Advisory. And I'd like to talk to you about a little bit about our company, and more importantly, what we think we can do for you in helping Memorial go through a partnership search. My colleague Joe Soretta forgot his board cutout today. I'm sorry about that. You might have read that's a little chilly in Chicago. And the 23 below last night finally did in his pipes. And so he woke up at 3 o'clock with water coming through the ceiling. And he said, please, do you think you can do this yourself? And I said, I'll try. So we had planned to have 2 of us, but you've got one. I, on the other hand, left on Monday and went to some meetings in Arizona and then worked my way over here. So I've had a pretty nice week, actually. I would like to have a dialogue more than a presentation. We do have a presentation. You've seen the materials. Anybody, please feel free to give me the speed up sign if you'd like to. And please interrupt me anytime if you want to go off on a tangent. That's usually more fun as well as more interesting. So feel free. I want to cover 4 things. 1, a little bit about our company. 2, a little bit about the market and what's going on out there, just for a little context for what's happening here. Because when you live in a particular community, and particularly when your leading institutions in town have challenges, you often wonder whether, is it something from outside, and usually it's some sort of combination of the 2. But talk a little bit about what's going on nationally to put things in context, then to talk really about what the process is that we would suggest you go through as you consider partners for the hospital, and then big sales pitch at the end. So we need to make sure we save time for that. Our company is a specialized firm. We work only in advising nonprofit and public hospitals in mergers and acquisitions. And as I call us, the 3 old guys have been doing this for 30 years. It's our life's work, and all we do is work with people like you in considering partnerships for your hospital. We're independent. We own the company. We don't have quarterly earnings. We don't have shareholders other than ourselves. And so we don't have to worry about getting the most projects, the biggest projects. We pick the projects to work on that we want to work on. We don't cross-sell other products because we don't have any. We provide advice, that's the product. We don't have any conflicts of interest with another part of the company or another thing that we're doing. And oddly, even though there's only 10 of us in total, we think we're the biggest specialized merger and acquisition group in the industry. So you might have a really big company, but they probably don't have 10 people that only work with nonprofits and governments in creating partnerships for hospitals. So that's a bit about the company. We've been doing it for a very long time. We've had lots of advisory assignments that entail looking at strategic positioning or something like that, that may not be a transaction per se or a partnership per se. But we've closed over 120 transactions over a 30-year period. We have worked with all sorts of organizations. We've worked in all sorts of states and all the way across the country. We've worked on the biggest nonprofit transaction in history in Kansas City about 10 years ago. We've worked in creating very successful multi-hospital systems like Advocate in Chicago, the leading system in the upper Midwest. But mostly we work with smaller hospitals, more like you all. And a couple examples here, we worked up the road in Longview a couple years ago with Good Shepherd. We can talk about that if you want to hear a little case study about it. We worked with a very similar hospital in Alpena, Michigan, which is toward the northern end of Michigan. Most recently, we worked with a hospital in Fremont, Nebraska, which is about your size, county-owned hospital. So lots of examples of similar arrangements as well as other sorts of things. And here's, I think, an important point. In doing this for 30 years, we have yet to not find a partner for a client of ours that was seeking a partner. And we have a lot of peer pressure back at the office, so nobody becomes the first one. So if we didn't think that we could find you a partner, we wouldn't be here. We'd go off and do something else. So we feel very confident about that. The other important thing, once you have a partner, and once you have an arrangement you're happy with, you have to go get approval from all kinds of people to get them closed. And that includes typically Attorney General, Health Department, Medicare, all sorts of people. And we've never had one of our partnership arrangements challenged on those bases by the government entities. So pretty good track record. Worked all across the country. As you can see, the shaded states are where we've done some work. The dots are completed partnerships where we've worked. They might be where we're working with the larger entity. They're typically where we're working with the smaller entity. So generally what we do is we work with an independent organization and help them decide whether they should plug in with someone else in some way, and then also who it should be and how they should do it. We've done a lot of work in Texas. We've closed 13 partnerships in Texas over the years. Good Shepherd, these are alphabetical by location. It's kind of a funny way to do it. But almost all of these involved, or about half of them involved county or district facilities, as well as a number of not-for-profits. And you can see the list. We can talk about specific ones if you like. Recently, we've worked on quite a number of public hospital projects. And you can see the list here. We're working right now with Santa Clara County on acquiring some hospitals in a bankruptcy situation. Very high profile. The Attorney General's suing us to stop the deal. All kinds of cool stuff's going on. But that's not terribly typical. Indian River Medical Center, I think we'll talk about a little bit later. That's a situation in Florida, in Vero Beach, just closed at New Year's, where there's a district hospital a district that owns the hospital, has taxing power, et cetera, and then a separate not-for-profit that operates the hospital and leases the hospital from the district. Fairly common arrangement, similar to what Good Shepherd had up the road, although that was straight from the county, not from the district, but you get the idea. In that situation, the thing that almost sank the hospital over the last 15 years was the district board and the hospital board could not get along. And they tried to get in each other's business, and it was dysfunctional. There were actually lawsuits from time to time. And through a happenstance, they got a group of people on both sides who finally said, we really ought to bury the hatchet. We ought to do the right thing for the community. And let's see if we can't find a partner for this hospital. So they buried the hatchet, they hired us, and we went out and got them the Cleveland Clinic, which was pretty good reputation. And the Cleveland Clinic was willing to do some things they had never done before, like make a commitment to spend $225 million in capital. And here was the tough one, actually pay rent on the lease from the district. So, you know, these things are possible, but they're only possible if people are working together to accomplish the goal. A couple other examples up there. Here's our smiling faces. Joe is the dashingly good-looking fellow here next to me, and hopefully you'll get to spend a lot of time with him over the next few months. So that's the company. Any questions about that or anything? Okay. A couple things about what's going on out there. You read in the paper, everybody's merging, there won't be any independent hospitals left. Well, if you have been around the block a few times and have a historical perspective, you see that in the 90s, that was really the merger mania. That's when the HMOs were coming to town and growing very fast. And you had to be part of a network. It's a very similar dynamic, only even stronger. So many, many partnerships were struck in the 90s. During the 2000s, there weren't that many. It was mainly situations of individual hospitals becoming distressed and sort of having to sell, if you will. And then since then, activity's gone up, but it's not the feeding frenzy that you sort of read about in the paper. So nobody should tell you you should create a partnership because everybody else is. You may have good reasons, but because it's just like you with your kids, right? It's not a good reason. So there's a lot of it going on, but it's not quite the frenzy you might hear. This is kind of interesting. The other thing that's happened over the years, and the different colors here are the different ownership models, okay? So the green part of each bar is the number of hospitals that are not-for-profit 501c3s. The gold is local government, that's where you fit in. The gray is religious, and the sort of rust color, don't know where that came from, is the investor under the for-profits. And there have been times when we thought the for-profits are taking over. There have been times when we thought the religious ones will go away, and actually none of that's happened. The proportions there are pretty similar, are pretty steady over this entire time period. So I think that's an interesting thing. The most interesting thing is the line with the dots on it. That's the percentage of these hospitals that are in a system rather than being independent. And so in 1995, 40% of hospitals were in a system, and now 60%, and we think it's going to take another jump. So it clearly is a trend, and so there must be benefits there. The question is, what are the benefits, and are they benefits for you as an independent as you consider this? One thing that's happening is local governments are getting out of the hospital business at a faster rate than other organizations. You can see the number of them has dropped, and you can see that the proportion of total hospitals, particularly in the last few years, the green line, has come down. And that's happened for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is that with the wave towards bundled payments, population health, and the sorts of things you need some scale and systems for, which you do read about, and I'm sure you're familiar with, public hospitals often have a hard time participating in those programs and those situations because in many states you're not allowed to do joint ventures, et cetera, and many local government hospitals have just sort of stayed independent and stayed on their own while the people around them created systems, and now in the last couple of years that's begun to be an issue for many hospitals around the country. Okay. Quickly, because we could spend a couple days on this, when we talk about partnership, we have an extremely broad definition of what that means. And what the ovals represent here are the range of the relationships or the types of affiliations that you might have. And so in the lower left in the red ovals, okay, things like a management contract or a strategic affiliation with someone, or maybe not doing anything. That's Attractive in that you get to retain a high degree of control, okay? But if there are benefits of integration, those are low. And typically the trade-off that you would be looking at and that others look at is how much control are we giving up in order to get the benefits of the affiliation, right? And it might be capital, it might be cost reduction, it might be somebody putting in a new electronic medical record system for you, you know, whatever it might be. That's typically the trade-off. It isn't always, but it often is. In the middle, the gold circles are the sort of shared control models. So you might do joint ventures or something like that, where you've got some say and your partner has some say. And then in the upper right are things like merging or becoming part of a system in an ownership way. And so we're not here to say it's the third oval from the left, okay? It's not for us to say. It's for your partner and for you to say. We're gonna help you talk to people about how they might help you meet your objectives, and you'll get a range of proposals that will be indicative of a number of these different ovals. And then you decide what, if anything, you want to do. Okay, so that's the range of things going on out there. So a little bit about your situation, and then I want to talk about the process that we think you should go through. First of all, and this is the page where we tell you things you already know, okay? So you've got a number of challenges, and you know that. You've got demographic challenges, you've got a customer in town, a competitor in town, and so on. The challenges, I think, are fairly clear. The opportunities, though, we've spotted a few, and we'd work with you to identify some further ones. One of the things that's always important in a partnership, more so than ever today, is your geographic location, kind of an accident of fate, right? We worked with Fremont Health in Fremont, Nebraska 2 years ago. They're 35 miles from Omaha. They used to be their own market. Now they're not. Now people just drive into Omaha to their competitors to have their babies, right? That's the sort of thing that happens now. And so finding them a partner from not Omaha was extremely challenging. And ultimately, what we had to do was keep all the systems in Omaha, there were 3, really keen and thinking that they would be picked as the partner up until they weren't, right? And they ended up going with one of the groups in Omaha. And they're, so far extremely happy and so on. Your location is, you aren't too close to anybody. You're not quite too far from anybody. And you've got systems in larger markets kind of all the way around. And so it's likely, we think, and we hate to handicap these things, and we try not to, and here I am in a public meeting doing it anyway. This is why Joe should be here, right? Because he'd be doing this. Lost my point. Right, the geography. So we think there will be local people, handicapping, I got it back. We think there will be people from the surrounding area that will be interested, but you're also far enough from those areas that people who aren't currently in the market should be interested in coming in and building a node here. So we think there'll be a range of people that would want to talk to you about partnerships. The other thing that we just learned in talking to Rhonda earlier is that the performance has picked up nicely in the last few months. And that is really important because it's getting more and more difficult to turn around hospitals, and systems that might want to be your partner are finding they've got their own challenges, and they're getting less and less willing to take on challenging situations. So if your situation is becoming less challenging, that's a really good thing. So we were pleased to hear that. Any questions about this?
Yeah. What about, how do you account for, how do you account for the
the Cleveland Clinic going to Florida? Is that just because it was in a retirement area and Cleveland's like, well, we're gonna pick up those snowbirds? You have somebody that's so decidedly outside the
It's-
market area.
It's a total geography point. Thank you, I was just making the point, Darwin. The Cleveland Clinic already has a hospital west of Fort Lauderdale in Weston. And so they have a node there. And being intelligent people, they said, holy cow, our main business is up in Cleveland. Cleveland's not growing. So we need to grow somewhere, let's grow in Florida. And you have all the snowbirds that move down who know the brand and so on. And so for them, they had a corporate strategy of growing in Florida, which they adopted weeks before we picked up the phone and called them and said, hey, would you be interested in talking to our client? That's why it's so important to have the right list of partners and to have a relative, not hundreds, but maybe dozens, the right list of possible partners, because you don't know what they're thinking and how they might be thinking, we'd really like to be somewhere like Nacogdoches. You just don't know, so you have to call them up and ask them. Good question. And by the way, the Cleveland Orchestra does the same thing. They spend the winter in South Florida because that's where the donations are. Okay. So what that means, we've probably talked about some of these points. There will be enough people interested. We don't know whether it's a big number or a small number, but they'll be interested in being your partner for very specific reasons. And what we need to do is find those reasons, give those reasons, and then get the right people into the process. Telling somebody you're doing better is not sufficient. We're gonna have to demonstrate it. So job number 1 or 2 or 3 for us would be to come down and sit down with the finance staff and others and say, okay, what exactly is going on and what is this, this improvement in operations so that we can communicate that effectively. Lots of complexity around the district, the taxes, the bonds, you know that. And we'll work through that. That's not uncommon, it's just complicated. And you're gonna need to be, we're all going to need to be flexible about the process. And I think this is on the next one as well. The flexibility point, secondly, you can say, we wanna go through the process this way. Or we can say, we wanna go through the process this way. But if the best looking partners wanna do it a different way, you may need to zig and zag a little bit. Now, we know which zigs lead to success and which don't, so we won't let anybody go the wrong way on a process. But I'm about to show you a diagram that says, here's the process. It might look different, but only if you agree that we should change it. Bold. The biggest risk that you have is if you're not together trying to make this work. Doesn't mean you have to agree, doesn't mean you have to sing campfire songs, but you need to work together to get to the end result that you're looking at. And I believe that if we could get the Vero Beach people working together or help them work together, that shouldn't be an issue. And you know, we've seen the recent articles and the process, and just the fact that we're here today, I think is really positive, but you need to stick together. Another point is about communication. It's a public entity, we understand that, we do a lot of this. And communicating effectively with physicians, employees, community, and with the partners is all very important. We can help you work through that, but it's not a go in the back room and come out in 3 months and say, here's our shiny new partner. And we certainly understand that, and we want to make sure you understand that we understand that. Okay? Any questions about these? Okay, the process. This is what we'd like to do. This is what we're going to try to do. It's roughly the time period in which we'd like to do it. There are always, unintended things that happen. Basically, we got 3 phases in an engagement like this. We would start out with preparation, where we would take your objectives that you've expressed for a partnership, and we'd make sure we really understood them. And we might suggest a few tweaks in the wording to help them be, effective with a partner. But we'd make sure that we understood the business, the objectives, and what you're trying to accomplish. Then we would create something called an information memorandum, which is really a little book about the hospital and the community. I'm sure you can imagine what that looks like. And we would call up a list of potential partners that we think make sense and that you approve, all right? We don't just go off and do stuff, all right? You all control this process. So we'll show up, we'll say, you ought to call these people. You go, don't call them, do call them, and we'd have a conversation about it. We would start calling people by the end of the month, February. So in the month of February, which we realize is a short month, we would get ourselves up to speed. We'd understand the situation. We'd be able to position you for a partner, and we'd get the stuff ready to send. Pick up the phone the end of February and call people that you approve us to call. We would get initial proposals from them, and these would be a wide range of things. Somebody might say, we'll do a management contract. Someone will say, we'd like to lease it. Someone will say, we want a joint venture some service lines. We don't know. We have to ask. And you can't sit in a room and decide who your partner is and what the partnership is going to look like. You need to talk to people, and that's our job. We'd get those proposals early April, hopefully, mid-April at the worst, and then we'd go through them with you. And there might be 6 and there might be 12. Those are kind of typical numbers. And then you would decide which, if any, you want to go further with. And if you did, you'd meet the partners, because part of it's what's on paper, and most of it is who it is that's writing it, right? And you need both of those parts in the process. So you check each other out, the people and the arrangements that you think you like in sort of April and May. And then if there's a partner, and if there's a relationship that you think you want to move forward with, you might sign a letter of intent, which is a 10-page non-binding expression of, okay, here's what we're working towards. And then from that point, you go into sort of the heavy investigation, negotiating contracts or leases or joint venture agreements or whatever they might be. And if all goes pretty well, by sometime in October-ish, you would be completed with whatever partnership you're going to have. Now, I'll just say it one more time. You don't have to do a partnership. We can't make you do a partnership. We hear this all the time. Are you going to make us do something? You all look pretty fierce and self-confident, and I don't think we can make you do anything. So it's your process. We're guiding you through it. Your decision. We'll tell you what we think of it, but it's really up to you what, if anything, happens. Any questions on this? Okay.
I have a quick question.
Great. Thank you.
Of all of the different accounts that you have worked with, or clients you've worked with, how accurate have your timelines been? I assume this is quite accurate for the size of our hospital or the issues that you know about our hospital or whatever.
Mine tend to be optimistic. I'm an optimistic kind of guy. So Joe's had a go at this already, trying to stretch it out a little bit. There are 2 things that change the timetable, because we are very sad people and we work all the time, so it's not down to us. The 2 things that slow these things down are the client making a decision, and that's not a bad thing. We in Alpena, these guys up in Michigan, they had the proposals and they got partway through and they couldn't decide who they wanted to go with. And it was because they hadn't asked a couple of the questions that they wanted to know about, but they didn't know they were going to have the questions. So we kind of spent an extra month investigating that. And that's fine, it was their choice, it helped to make a good decision and so on. So it's, one facet is your decision-making, and the other is just what we run into. The partners, depending on what you do, are going to want to look very carefully at this organization because of the financial challenges you've had. The physical plant is going to be investigated because you've got some older buildings as part of it. And so the due diligence might be a little long. Depending on how difficult the negotiations might be, that could take some time. If we get into the bond holdings and everything, which we have no idea whether we will, that could take some time. So this is kind of a standard. It allows for a couple of hiccups. It could go on longer than this, depending on what might happen. Okay.
Barry, I have a question. When we look at the engagement phase in the timeline, you know, the information memorandum, that's a piece that is ongoing. The creation of the data room, with all that takes, what kind of support will your 10 guys, and as we say, he and she's,
Yep.
can they bring to us? Because we're not a huge, robust, you know, accounting
Yep.
you know, agency, so we'll need some help there. So what can you do to help us with that?
Great question. The initial information that we need, there's a 1.5-page information request list. Not a 20-page, but a 1.5 pages. And so somebody's gonna have to find that, and this is like starting hopefully tomorrow. Somebody's gonna have to find that and upload it into a data room on our website, okay? And we start with whatever's lying around on the shelf. So that first piece is gonna be probably less difficult than you might be imagining. The part where you get to, you've got a potential partner, you've got a letter of intent, and they wanna really dig in, that's gonna be difficult no matter what. No matter who you hire and no matter how many people you have, it's just difficult. What we can do primarily in that process is interface with the partner and help you manage the flow. I don't think it would do us any good to send 3 people down here to sit in front of a computer trying to find files. What we can do is manage the flow, tell the partner when they're being unreasonable, and say, we don't think you need that yet, just back off. So we'll get them to ask for as little as possible. But it's gonna be ugly in the end, it just is. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, a couple things about us. We sent down a draft of an engagement letter, and the way that we work is we want to be aligned with you. Okay, we don't get paid unless you are happy with the outcome. That's what a contingent fee means. And we wouldn't be here if we didn't think that you could get a happy outcome, an outcome you're happy with. So you'd retain us, there's a retainer fee, there's a transaction fee, and then there's reimbursement of our out-of-pocket expenses. We don't mark them up, we don't charge you for copying, you know, it's seriously just what we need to spend. So there's that. And then sort of the big finish, and then we'll have questions. We're really designed for projects like this. The 3 old guys and the young guys have chosen advising nonprofits and governments as our life's work. This is what we do. And so we've created a company where we don't have conflicts, we don't have temptations to sell you other services. All we do is we give you advice. And not infrequently, the advice is, you know, none of these are really good enough. None of these proposals, we can't get them any better. We had a big client in the Northeast a few years ago. We told our client not to do the deal. And we had one of these contingent fees. And, you know, my kids are now having jobs in college, no, I'm just kidding. But, you know, so we walked away from the money, but we did the right thing. And the reason we did that is we don't have all these other business streams to support our advisory business. The only asset we have is our reputation. And so if we don't find you a partner and you're happy that you don't have a partner and you decide to go on independently, but you tell the next person we did a great job. I think somebody called Bill Huffman up at Good Shepherd, and he said, hopefully, apparently, said good things about us. So that's what we want. We've always found clients, partners for our clients. We have gotten them approved by the people who need to approve them, and we all want to be happy at the end of the process.
I have a quick question, Barry.
Yeah, sure.
When you say that your aim is to align objectives, do you mean to align them between the client and the proposed partner?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Well, initially with you. Our client in Alpena was a great guy, and we were, I think someone called him too, Carmen Biella. You're a busy guy. And Carmen's, I don't know if he told you this, but they were deciding between us and a very fine consulting group. And his concern, and I don't know where he got it, and we certainly didn't put the bug in his ear, but his concern was, okay, his experience with consultants is they want to come to town, get comfortable, and turn on the meter, right? And our business is we want to advise you, we want to help you make a decision, and then we're going to leave and we're going to go do the next thing, whatever that may turn out to be. And he really liked that, and that was one of the reasons. So our objectives are aligned in the sense of we want to help you make a decision, and we think you need to make a decision pretty quickly. One is because of your larger situation, which is stressed, and two is you seem to have a window where things have gotten better. So we need to tell the story, we need to tell it quickly and effectively, and you should make a decision about what you want to do and then get on. And obviously, you're only going to enter into a partnership if you feel like you're well aligned with the partner. So everybody's aligned at the end of the day.
And so, to the fee, it's a $50,000 down payment, and then $10,000 a month every month that we have a contract, plus any expenses out of pocket.
Correct.
That doesn't include hourly time, you're in Nacogdoches talking.
We don't have hourly time.
Right.
We work unlimited hours.
Sure, but like a hotel room, we pay that back.
What's that, sorry?
We would pay
Hotel,
off the
yeah,
hotel,
yeah.
flight, and that kind of stuff. And then it'd be 2% of whatever deal, or a minimum of $750,000
Right.
in the end.
Yep.
And we've had some debate, about hourly rates, which really I know some of those, so we just want to make sure for everybody's edification that you don't charge hourly, you're just
Correct.
basically $60,000 up front, $10,000 a month after that.
Yeah,
Until we-
50 and then 10.
So the first month it'll be 60, and then 10,000 a month every month that we're
Right.
here.
Yeah.
Regardless of how much.
Yes.
What was the longest time frame between initiation and closure? And what was the shortest amount of time too?
Let's see, I gotta go through 123 things here. Longest one I can remember was a year and a half. It was a bankruptcy situation in Miami Beach back in 1992. And the good news was, and I've got cold weather on my brain here, it was 2 winters in 1 summer, so that was good. But that took a long time because of the, that's really.
Was it
The-
asset acquisition one?
It was a not-for-profit, it was a Catholic hospital that was in bankruptcy, and a doctor-owned group purchased it, was that particular. Generally, it's 9 to 12 months. And, there's some give and some take. There are so many people working on these that are used to sort of the rhythm of it. So you would think you could turn a definitive agreement around in a couple days, right? But everybody working on it is kind of used to it taking 10 days. So unless there's a good reason, it still kind of turns out, so we've got the 10-day turnaround in the suggested timeline, yeah. But 9 to 12 is kind of the normal range.
How flexible are you with that initial retainer fee?
We could talk about it if that, we don't, up to a point, we don't like money to come between friends, or people would like to be friends with. So, you know, yeah,
We'll
that's
talk.
good.
We'll talk.
All right, fine.
We'll address it later.
How many of your facilities have seen service lines reduced or otherwise from the smaller one to part?
Well, it depends on the situation. It does not happen that often. And we've not done sort of a study or a tabulation of going back and checking, but we do tend to keep in touch with our clients. As you know, a few of the people you called are retired CEOs or people we worked with 5 years ago. And generally what happens when a hospital joins a system is the system wants to make a success of it, right? Why would you take somebody on who's struggling and just let them struggle? You would, and so if there's a strong partner and if they have a strategic reason for joining up with you, then it makes sense that they would build and invest rather than take things away. It wouldn't make sense to take on $100 million in revenue and make it 70, right? I mean, why would you do that? It's a legitimate concern, and everybody worries about it, but it rarely happens in practice. Now, up in Longview, there was some more dramatic reshaping of the business, and you probably know some of this, than there often is. But the reason is that when they called us, they were losing $12 million on $420 million in revenue. So a loss, but not alarming. The next year, they were losing multiples of that. So they opted to join Christus, and Christus had to fix it. And so, that may be one of the more dramatic changes to, in the early days of a partnership that we've seen in a while. And you could spend some more time talking with people up there if
I'm
you wanted to.
familiar with,
Okay.
I've worked at Marshall Hospital, I'm familiar with it.
Okay, very good, all right, good.
I want to remind everybody again, we are live streaming, so if you could speak into the microphones a little bit better, board members, it would be helpful to the people who are watching. I have another question.
Sure.
Would you be able to estimate at all what, like, the expense costs will be? Because when I take a look at, just for example, I just used 12 months because that seems to be kind of an easy one to do.
Mhm.
That we pay you the 50,000, and then we'd owe you 120,000 over the course of 12 months. And then afterwards, your minimum is 750,000, so that's $920,000 that we'll have to try to pay off in a year, and plus expenses.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'll bet anything we're gonna be knocking on $1 million. And we just simply do not have the money. I don't know where we're gonna get it. We have no way to get that kind of money. So I would really like to have, I mean, I know that you've helped a lot of hospitals that are in financial distress. So if you could try to answer that a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. There's two answers. One is, you may be able to generate it over the next year if things are getting better. And two is, you may be entering into a partnership with someone who is more financially able than you. And so I guess, we're taking the risk that you will be able to pay us. I mean, we're in business, right? And if you are, great. If you're not, then, it may be that as part of the partnership process, the partner would be willing to pay that.
well, that might have to be the way it is. Because for us to generate that kind of money, one of the things that personally, from my viewpoint, because I've really been studying our financial issues quite a bit, is that at the last board meeting, we did not get a complete financial statement. It was a draft. We didn't get a balance sheet. We didn't get an update for our 13-week cash flow projection. And so very truthfully, Barry, we truly do not know where we stand and haven't been able to find out.
Yep.
So it makes it very difficult for me, being aware of our fiduciary responsibilities, to advise that we're going to choose someone with that kind of expenditures when I have no clue where we can get that money from. I even asked to have an estimate of what kind of IGT money we might be able to get this year, because we do have an IGT loan that's kind of ongoing, but I haven't even been able to get that. So it just stands to reason that I don't know that I would be able to make a decision to spend that kind of money at this moment, even though we need a partner desperately, but nevertheless, without having, any known quantity to maybe come up and pay those fees, I don't know what to do.
Well, I think we're all taking a leap of faith here. You're taking a leap of faith that we or the other firm can find you a partner. Then whoever you choose, and you would be having faith that you're gonna find a partnership and a partner that makes sense. And then I think if you get that far, the rest is likely to take care of itself. The important thing is finding the right partner and the right arrangement with them, and things tend to work out. I don't think we've ever not been paid in the end, and that would be another thing my partners wouldn't be happy about. But it's a risk we all take.
Maybe to save that question, but, so 3 months from now, we're behind $10,000. You get some kind of offer, you're still gonna present it to this board, whether we've paid you or not for that 1 month.
Oh, sure, oh, yeah.
Because
yeah.
you have an incentive in the long run.
Yeah.
So it's not, we don't pay 10,000 once, you're still gonna work with us.
Yeah, we're not down tools kind of people. We also don't like seeing our receivables boom. So, we'd be calling you about the 10,000.
You'd be calling
But,
that.
but we wouldn't not answer the phone, for sure, absolutely.
Do you have a history of working with institutions that are under CIAs?
We have in the past, yeah. We've done it before. We had one with a Department of Labor consent agreement in the 70s that was still operative. Yeah, there's no end to those, right? It's you just stop dancing when they tell you to stop dancing. That's a whole nother story.
When we talk about culture, when we talk about the different entities, myself, growing up in Chicago, then the other side of me living in Florida and owning in Florida and all of that. So I get all of the different types of demographics and all of that. The people of this community are used to this being a standalone independent hospital. Those of us that have been in healthcare for, what'd you say, Richard, 40 plus years, thank you for reminding me that. We've seen the ups and downs, the things that are good, the things that are bad. Our job as a board is to make sure that we find the best fit, the best company that will suit our culture, our community's culture, and keep us alive for the next multiple generations to come. What kind of things have you guys done to proactively try to make that fit?
Can you give us any kind of idea of what long-term results have been from the partnerships that you put together?
I can't think of any that have closed, which is kind of the baseline, right?
Yes, very much so.
And this includes, in, 2 hospital towns where we found a partner for the less vibrant second partner. I'm thinking of one from 1993, still doing fine. Generally, it's I'm trying to think of a bad scenario, and I honestly can't think of one that's been sort of a disaster. Oh, there was one that closed, St. Joseph in Fort Worth. We had actually found them partners twice for 2 different clients, and ultimately, they just didn't need that hospital. And it's been demolished and the land's redeveloped and so on. But Fort Worth didn't need that hospital in that location. So there's one that, closed, but from a community standpoint, it wasn't a terrible burden in that one.
Another question I have is that, very many times we have, gotten into contracts that really have not been the best for our district or our hospital. Would you have a problem with our legal counsel writing up a letter of agreement that's not so one-sided? This is extraordinary. I mean, I've studied it
Yeah.
greatly. It's very, very one-sided for you. And I think that we would need one that's a little more fair for us as well.
Well, our understanding was you had it reviewed, and it sounded like it was okay. What it says is what we'll do and what you'll do. I'm not sure what is one-sided about it, but we could talk about it, I guess. It hadn't occurred to me, I thought it was already acceptable. I can't think, they do get adjusted and negotiated, but rewritten or started over, I think we'd have a problem with that. But I don't know what the issues are that you're trying to resolve.
Okay.
It seems to me it's a contract for services, we'll do these things, you pay us this much, we'll keep it all. We'll treat everything appropriately, and you can fire us anytime you want. So, I'm not sure what the issues are.
I think part of it is, that we might have to stay paid for 18 months and all those kinds of things that I'm not quite sure need to be in there. But if it's negotiable, that's the answer I needed.
Okay.
And I really honestly don't know if our legal counsel read it and approved it, or if, I don't know for sure. I didn't get that information.
It's been
I
reviewed.
would- I would say we look at from a legal standpoint, not the business points. So, but what you're referring to like the tail, which would mean if we terminate and then we do a transaction later, that's a business point to negotiate. And so we didn't vet that, obviously, because that's a business point for the board, which is why the letter's in the board.
Yeah, well, and of course, I can't possibly grade it on a legal standpoint, but just from looking at it, it was, there were some things that I just said, this doesn't sound very
Okay.
I think
Well-
that market standard.
Which is why we have the engagement letters in front of you for making that decision, so that becomes part of the analysis.
So, step 1, decide whether you wanna work with us. Step 2, see what you wanna change. Step 3, talk to me about it, and then we'll see where we get there. What's that?
Negotiation comes once you pick, or the finer points of this, I should say, not negotiation.
Well, I just don't know if you wanna waste the time talking about it. It's up to you, it's your,
No, I just
Sure.
asked the question if you would be willing to,
we look at it, absolutely. You bet. Yeah. We don't have a standard that's, decreed from HQ that says we have to use it, so we can talk about it.
If they're voting here, I'm coming.
Yes. On the other hand, it might be nice to say, oh, no, they won't let us change that, but, swings and roundabouts. What else? Anything else?
Farron, you haven't said very much. Do you have any questions or comments or anything?
I made notes,
Okay. Anybody else?
made notes.
Okay. We thank you for your time. Barry.
Good, thank you very much for having me. We love to work with you, so please pick us.
Okay, next we will have the representatives from Huron come. Do we want to take a little bit of a break? Okay, we will break for 5.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
I know, I'm sure you were.
Yes. Both of us.
Somewhere in the middle?
My buddy, sure.
Yeah, right. Trying to get in on it? Hey. What, you gonna do fire me?
No. When it comes to, after this one, don't pull it up for the board until we clear the room.
Okay. So I wasn't supposed to send it to everybody?
Come back on?
Yeah, it's back on, but now we're paused.
So what did
Sure, it's-
did it time out or something?
Do what?
Did it time out or
It
something?
closed down. It closed down. You know, I was sitting there watching it, I was like, man, it closed. It doesn't.
I wish there was some way to pause it. We're still live.